Hello, everybody. Hello. So, first of all, I'd like to say, forgive my appearance because, as my daddy used to say, I know I might be looking a little throwed away today. I need a haircut and all that. Supposed to be getting a haircut today, but that's later, and couldn't let that prevent me or hold me up from delivering this message. So, I'm going to get to it. Also, I broke my glasses, as you all can see. Actually broke both pair of my glasses, but I got one arm on this thing, and it's kind of hard to look down and read because they might fall off. So you all just bear with me. But anyway, don't pay attention to the appearance. Pay attention to the words that's about to come out of my mouth, because that's what's important. So today I have a very good and deep message, I think, and this has been one of my most fun messages to write, and I think it's going to be one of the best messages I've delivered to date, because it's very important. And this one is specifically for the women and young ladies of the world, but you men need to hear this too, because it's educational, informational, and you all need to learn that we have to stop treating our women as secondary citizens, and we have to stop excluding our daughters where we uplift our sons. Now listen, so as y'all can see, I write a lot, but today, this is what I have for you all. So, there's an old saying: nature is the great teacher and the best of moral instructors, but inept guides by comparisons. So what that saying is, we can learn a lot from watching nature and looking at God's creation. Today, I would like to speak upon something that I am calling the broken and unfinished doctrine, being taught by theologians and religious groups all around the entire world. Now, to begin with, I would like everyone to step back and consider a thing. Take a look around you. Look at all of God's creation. Take a look at nature and the living things in it. But most especially, I want you all to consider the human family. In a complete human family, or even in nature, how many members total make up the image of a complete family? Is the answer not four? A father, a mother, a son, and a daughter? In a case where there is only a son, or a daughter for that matter, doesn't something appear to be lacking or missing? If one were to be thinking along the lines of, I quote, a complete picture. Now, of course, I'm not saying that if you have a family that where you have two daughters or you have two sons, that's not a complete family. That's not what I'm saying. I'm speaking in relations to as a set, like a complete set of what we are capable of producing as humans. A man and a woman can produce both a male and a female offspring, not just a male. So, of course, I'm speaking in reference to the Trinity teachings, which only imply that there are only a Father, a Holy Mother Spirit, and a Son Spirit, which make up the embodiment of God, or the unified body of God in heaven. In antiquity, this is not the way it was taught. Indeed, there are even cultures today that include the daughter too, as do the ancient Ethiopian texts, as well as ancient Jewish, Asian, and other groups who have held and preserved certain writings and practices of old. But today, I would like to explain to you how and why this great lie, this great offense, has been circulated for over 1,500 years now. So, as you all can still see for yourself today, women are held as secondary citizens in most societies, and being less than or unequal to the men of the world. But this has been done and repeated continuously by men, not by God. These are all man-made doctrines, as I'm about to prove to you, and made to keep the woman in submission. I gotta get rid of these things. Y'all bear with me. I'm gonna have to hold this paper up close to my face because I am very blind, but just pay attention. So, as you all, like I said, as you all can see for yourselves today, women are held as secondary citizens in most societies, as being less than or unequal to the men of the world. But this has been done and repeated continuously by men, not by God. These are all man-made doctrines, as I'm about to prove to you, made to keep the woman in submission, as well as away from the pulpits and teaching platforms where men of power can feel threatened and or opposed by them. Now stay with me and pay attention to what I'm about to say, y'all, dear people. Modern religions, particularly modern European Western Christianity, attempt to portray Eve as the reason for all sin entering the world and why it is said that we are all born into sin. However, as the Ethiopian texts have preserved and are presenting to the world today, it is an entirely different outlook and tradition preserved. Now, before you all balk at this, as many of you often do when people mention the Ethiopian text, I would just like you to consider these two things. Number one, the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church is the oldest continuously non-broken Christian church and monastery on the entire earth. It has been told for centuries now that European missionaries brought Christianity to Africa, but this is not true. Indeed, the fact of the matter is, Ethiopia claimed Christianity as its state and country religion over 300 years before Rome and Constantine or any other European nation. 300 years before. Number two, the Ethiopian church, the Ethiopian Christian Bible predates the King James Version, the one many of us Westerners held as sacred, by more than 1,000 years. That means it's older than the King James Version by more than 1,000 years, and it still contains all the same books that's in the King James Versions too. So it's not like this was added later. They had this from the start. Now, so I just wanted to point that out. So back to the history of where this broken women less than man doctrine comes from. You see, as these Ethiopian texts, is a coherent theology of human temptation and human failure that has Eve's story at the center. The pattern repeats. Someone is shown something beautiful. Someone desires what they're not supposed to have. Someone reaches for knowledge or power on a connection across a boundary that was placed there for a reason, and the consequences ripple out toward not just the person who made the choice, but to everyone around them, to their children, to their children's children, and to future generations. We all know about this. Eve reaches for the fruit. The Watchers reach for human women. The sons of men look beautiful to them, and so they come down and cross a boundary. This has been repeated, and I can go on and on and on. But in both cases, the reaching is not presented as uniquely evil. The desire is recognizable, almost sympathetic in these texts. What the Ethiopian texts insist on again and again is that recognizable desire pursued across a forbidden boundary does not become acceptable just because the desire was real. Now, this is a radically different moral framework from the one that Western Christianity eventually developed around Eve's story. In the Western tradition, shaped decisively by Augustine in the 5th century, so it was Augustine who came up with this doctrine that made, so this is what he presented to Christianity, and Christianity has ran with it ever since for 1,500 years. In the 5th century, Eve's transgression became the origin point of a doctrine called original sin, made by Augustine, in which all human beings are born into sin, already guilty, already damaged, already carrying in their bodies and in their wills a corruption that they did not personally choose. Eve's desire is not treated as recognizably human. It is treated as the infection that ended human innocence. Her name becomes, in much of Western Christianity culture, almost synonymous with female weakness and treachery. And y'all know that's true. Men always trying to run around talking about, oh, women this, women can't be trusted, women this, oh, it was Eve who did this, it was Eve who tricked Adam, it was because of Eve. Like they beat that into the ground to try to use it as an excuse to hold women down or keep them down. But I mean, everybody know a man can't be trusted no more than a woman can. Anyway, like I said, in much of Western Christian culture, Eve's name has become almost synonymous with female weakness and treachery. For 1,500 years, theologians used her story to argue that women should not teach, should not lead, should not speak in the church, because their nature, Eve's nature, is fundamentally oriented towards deception and transgression. The Ethiopian texts do not do this. They give Eve a conscience. They give her grief. They give her understanding. The Eve of the first book of Adam and Eve, a book that's in the Ethiopian Tewahedo Bible, is not a symbol of female weakness. She is a human being who made a choice that had catastrophic consequences, who understood exactly what she had done, who lived with that understanding every day of her long life, and who still managed to love her husband and raise her children and survive in a world that gave her nothing she had not earned without her own hands. So that is not a cautionary tale about women. That is a story about what it means to be human, what it means to have done something you cannot undo and to keep living and striving anyway. You know, the Ethiopian church preserved another detail about Eve that exists nowhere in the Western Bible: the names of her daughters. Now remember, this lesson all began with me saying history has intentionally tried to exclude the daughters. Genesis gives us Cain and Abel and Seth. It mentions obliquely that Adam and Eve had other sons and daughters in the genealogy records, but it names none of them, names none of the daughters. The Ethiopian text named them. Cain had a twin sister named Lulawa, and Abel had a twin sister named Aklia. Now it goes on and on and on to say more about these stories and about these, about these children and so on and so on. But I just wanted to point out to you, that it has been intentionally and systematically repeated, that women in our society are less strong than us, less capable as us men, that they're more weak than we are. But you all can even see with your own eyes, if you just look around today, that women are just as capable as men. In fact, in society, most of the roles have already reversed, where women are doing the jobs of men. And even in the homes and in the household, the women have, I'm sorry to say, but in a lot of cases, not in every case, of course, there's some men still being men. But in many cases, the men have, stepped down and the women have stepped up. Me and a friend of mine were just having that conversation the other day. And, it's funny, too, because I had just seen a couple weeks ago, I seen a video on Facebook where there was a young man and a woman riding in the car, and then they had a flat tire. And, this was, they were making, a joke about this. And then the woman, got out and she began to change the tire while her boyfriend was, sitting there harassing her and poking at her and ridiculing her and telling her, hurry up this and doing that. And don't you know this and that? And, all that. And it was supposed to be a funny story. But the whole, caption of it was saying that, this is the kind of guys, y'all date these days. This is what y'all like. And the other day I happened to be walking to the park, and it was probably God that made me come across this spectacle, because maybe to remind me that I needed to speak on this and make another video about it, because I hadn't been getting distracted, by social media and stuff like that, and haven't been doing much recording lately. But anyway, I was walking to the park and I seen that very thing. There was, as I entered the park, there was a young lady and a young man with a flat tire on a Mustang, and the girl was squatting down, taking the tire off, changing the tire, while her young boyfriend was standing behind her in the shade in his phone, doing just like this. Wasn't even paying attention to her. And I looked and I saw that, and I shook my head. I said, now look at this here rascal. I say, man, look at him. I say, excuse me, young lady. Do you need a hand? You need some help with that? And she looked at me and she said, no, sir. And you can just tell in her heart that young woman, it's talking about to make me cry, because I hate stuff like this. That young woman wanted all the help in the world, but she was afraid to say yes to me because her boyfriend was standing there, who probably would have took, me helping her some kind of way. You know what I'm saying? But you know, it's his fault that he wasn't able to assist his old lady. You know what I'm saying? Well, that young lady. Y'all know what I mean. But that was a shame that, you know, I couldn't even help her because he would have been offended by that, which he shouldn't even have been offended by that. He should have been happy that somebody was able to come and do what he could not do. But there ain't no excuse for him not even having that knowledge in this day and age. That same phone he had in his hand, he could have went on YouTube with and learned how to do that tire. But anyway, I digress, and so I'm getting off subject. But that completes this lesson for today. You know what? I may do another one later today, but that's all for that lesson and what I wanted to share with you all. You know, stop lying to our women, stop degrading them, stop lying to our daughters, stop telling them that they're any less than anybody else, because they are not. Love you all, and God bless y'all. Have a good day.